Everyone, welcome to the Torvus podcast. We are back. My name is Ari. I'm joined by Jason and Alex as well. And we're going to be tackling the king of monsters today. We're going to be talking about Godzilla. Now, in particular, we're going to be talking about some of the old films and obviously some of the new films. We're not going to tackle the brand new film yet, which is Godzilla versus Kong. We are going to talk about the old one, though, in 1962. We're going to throw some trivia your way, and we're going to make an argument why Godzilla is the king of monsters or isn't, and who should rightfully have won versus King Kong, Godzilla. And season 3 of the Torvus podcast is about versus, and so what better way to kick off a versus episode than having the giant lizard versus the giant ape. So, gentlemen, welcome, and let's get into it. So Jason and I recently, a couple days ago, we watched Godzilla 1962 versus Kong. It's absolutely hilarious. There's some amazing trivia involved. And Jay and I, when we watched it, literally, we should have had a camera on us because the commentary that we were throwing out was crazy. The film is tongue-in-cheek, and it actually has a different flavor than other Godzilla films. And one of the reasons is because they wanted to make the film kid-friendly. So they actually made, if you look at, so a piece of trivia here, if you look at King Kong in the Godzilla film in 1962, his face looks comical. And they did that on purpose because they didn't want to frighten small children. So they made him look the way he looks. So if you look at the film, and I'm going to throw up a still pic so you can see, it's crazy. It's the worst guy in a monkey suit that I've ever seen, but it works. So Jay, what was your?
It's such a good Halloween costume.
It looks like that. That's how bad it is.
Yeah. A guy at a rug place wouldn't wear a costume that bad. You know, the guy would be standing on the side of the street with a sign trying to bring your ass in to buy rugs or mattresses or some shit.
Yeah, it was crazy. And like there was no articulation. And we also noticed, if you look at King Kong in that 1962 film, Jay and I noticed that King Kong's arms, the guy in the suit, they had extensions of the guy's arm itself. And they didn't articulate at the end, and I think they did that to make him look more ape-like. But his arms were probably almost double the size of a normal arm, and that's why it looks so hilarious.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah,
there was lots of good arm stuff. Oh yeah, right. Sorry, I'm not really ready for this yet. Here.
Oh, he's doing it. So Jason is currently putting on white gloves, and the reason he's putting on white gloves is we noticed something in the film is every Japanese,
not just the Japanese, Americans in the sub, remember at the beginning?
True. They all had white gloves on. It was so funny, and it was part of the costume stuff. So the great thing about that film is in 1962 it sold 12.5 million tickets. This is massive for 1962. It was the most attended Godzilla film of all time, including re-releases, even to this very day. Now, I'm not sure how the new Kong has done, but Kong and Godzilla, but that has been the number one.
And there was way less people back then, and movies didn't have the same distribution. So even if it wasn't as much as now, it still would be relatively more. They don't usually inflate things to show, like, you know, when you do with money, they say, you know, in 1962 dollars in modern, they don't do that for numbers. There should be some kind of conversion. It would be even bigger.
There is. So I looked that up. I specifically.
Oh, there is. Okay. There you go. You're the research guy.
So
I'm just a guy with white gloves.
And Godzilla versus Kong has the largest ROI, which is return on investment, of any film of all time. That is nuts. And so at the time, I think it was like 60,000 to make, maybe, and it made like a few million. So its return on investment was 8,600%. Crazy. Like the reason it did so well probably was because it had the Hollywood Kong and then the Japanese kind of version kind of coming together.
It's like the comic crossovers, but early on. Yeah, it's like X meets Y.
Yeah.
They even have a good little, you can put a clip in afterwards. They have that little section where they're talking about the verses when they're in the company.
Yeah, and so the one thing about that is, so they got the rights from Universal, which owns King Kong, and then Toho was the Japanese version for Godzilla. So they were able to mesh those together. So that's why it was such a huge hit, I think. And there's also a piece of trivia out there which is not true, but everyone believes it. This is an urban legend. The urban legend is that in 1962, when they released this film, the American version had Kong winning and the Japanese version had Godzilla winning. However, that is not true. That was just one of those myths. There's only one cut on how the actual film ended. So,
but that's what they would do today. You'd do that for the 2 releases, and then you'd get the DVD. Well, do people still get DVDs? I don't know. I still live in a world where people get DVDs. So then you'd have both endings on it, on the extended one.
So Alex, what do you recall from your Godzilla experience? I know that you started to watch Godzilla and Kong.
Yes.
And so we actually haven't even touched it yet, so we won't get into what. Have you found it okay, or?
Yeah, I think it's like, especially if we were just talking in terms of special effects, like it's time that the special effects have finally caught up to make something that is truly just visually, you don't have these same hilarious aspects that you would in the original ones, where you're like, you can see the wires or the little, toy versions of cities and stuff, right? Like special effects have certainly come along in the many years that it's been around for now, and I think it's finally like a very seamless experience so far. I'm only about half an hour into it, but just incredible seeing Kong and just the way his face moves and everything like that is like, it's very impressive. It looks like a massive gorilla.
Yeah, and talk about special effects. Obviously, we've come a long way in the 50 plus 60 years since the original one came out. But what Jason and I noticed about the 1962 version is they had guys in rubber suits, they had stop motion, they had like stop motion claymation, they had models,
blue screen, and they meshed them all together. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was hilarity, actually, because you just never know what you'd get. And one of my favorite things in the 1962 version is one of the monsters that Kong faces in the beginning, Alex, because I know you probably don't remember this because you haven't seen it in a while, is he fights a giant octopus. And it's a real octopus that they have, and they have these little model houses, and then you see the octopus come in and it goes right, and it's going over them, and all the natives who are around the area, they're all screaming, and so the octopus was there. So the funny thing about it is, for the film, they actually used 4 live octopi in the film that King Kong would face. At one point, they actually have a model which is on his face, and he's one of those. It's like a face hugger from Alien, and then he tears it off and he throws it. And the funny trivia part of this is they released 3 of the octopi.
Oh, afterward?
Yes, but one of them they didn't release because the director ate it. So, yeah.
Jeez.
So he had dinner, and
taco, get that good
taco.
Yeah. So and there's actually an interesting trivia point which I'm going to get to in a bit about taco as well. So
that was one thing that was a little bit it didn't quite work. The octopus was really cool having it in there, but because it was a real octopus, it sort of pulled you out of the movie a little bit, because you had the cheesy toy models, which are awesome. You had the stop motion things, the live stuff, but the octopus was just too good because it was a real octopus. It looked a little out of place. That kind of thing. Whereas if you put it in now, the monsters, like you're saying, Alex, like King Kong is caught up now. You can do facial expressions and stuff that you couldn't back back then. So the octopus was like at a level that was above. That was a little bit out there. It was still cool. It was still cool to have it and stuff.
Because it was a real octopus, right? Like, yeah, like it wasn't CGI. Like, and it's the same thing with like the original Star Wars series, is when you can get creative enough and use models and real film and you know, trick the eye that way instead of lame CGI, right? Like, I think we went through a bit of a, like, where you would be able to argue that when a lot of the first CGI Godzillas, because there's so many, but like the ones that were coming out in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the CGI, like, and that was some of my first experience in the big screen, right? It was like, oh, you know, you could tell that it was quite fake, as opposed to now when it's all done on a computer, but it's pretty incredible visually to see.
Yeah. And we talked about this, is you got to do something either really bad or really good. It's when you get in between that it just doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
You get the cheesy rubber suit guy, awesome. Get super well done CGI that looks like real, that's awesome too. But when you get the kind of CGI that's a little bit off, then it doesn't quite work as well. But the octopus was good. It was awesome because of the way it undulated and stuff. I can see why they did it, because there's no way you're going to replicate that, and that is a scary kind of thing to think about, something that big. I just keep thinking of Calvin, but anyway.
But this is what's funny. Like, when the three of us watch films, like, we've watched several hilarious films, and we know that the special effects suck. Like, for me, it doesn't have to look totally real. Like, there's a nostalgia and something neat about watching a film that, you know, it's like, that's horrible, but it's just, you love it anyway, right? And Alex, so you pointed out Star Wars, that's a prime example. They've done a lot of re-edits and they've added new stuff. But if you look at the original with the models, they're pretty good, but they're not great. You can actually tell they're models, and, you know, some of it's good and then some of it's like meh, but suspension of disbelief and all that, of course. But the problem is George Lucas has had his re-edits and he's like, I'm going to add.
Yeah, and that's where that sucks. When you go and you do that kind of, that, like the Jabba, I mean, that's just garbage. You're better off sticking with the old cheesy stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a fan of the old stuff, and it doesn't have to look totally realistic to me, because it takes away from the film.
This is where you get into things like, you know, a lot of the like animatronics and the sort of the Muppetry or puppetry, if you will, right? Where you are doing something real world that's simulating an effect. And I think that's where, like, especially in the Star Wars series, in terms of like costume design and stuff like that. But then when you get more into the Godzilla, it's like, when are they using that animatronics of like a big, you know, claw coming through a building or something like that, right? Like, it's pretty cool when you can get the actors next to something and have that be in the shot, as opposed to doing a CGI or a green screen, right? Because it does take away from it too. The more real that you can make it, the better response the actors are going to have to it.
Like Mandalorian with Yoda.
Exactly like that.
Josh Brolin, like, when he was playing Thanos, he actually was standing there, but then he had this thing on his back, which where his head would be. So the actors had to look up higher because that's where Thanos's head would be, because he's 8 feet tall. But yeah, you need something to play off, because there are, I think, Alex, you're right. There's movies out there where it's just, we're going to add this, so just make believe. You know, that's tough for an actor to do.
Especially
because
Hollywood.
they don't know what the visual concept guys are going to come up with, or what the vision is, right? You can read a script and have a vague idea, and I'm not trying to take anything away from the actors, but I think it just helps so much more to have it as real as possible, and then be doing like touch-up things, right?
Yeah.
And so it's funny, because you said the actors, you know, sometimes don't know. I'm going to throw a piece of trivia from my favorite movie of all time, Big Trouble in Little China. And the actor that played Rain, one of the three storms, did not know that the film was tongue-in-cheek and a comedy until the very end, when he was fighting Wang. And they have that scene where they're fighting, jumping in the air, and then they're fighting in the air. And then he looked at John Carpenter, the director, and he's like, well, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then John Carpenter's like, it's a comedy. And he's like, it is? So it's stuff like that, which is awesome. And we mentioned earlier, I'm just going to go back, that There's actually a character in the 1962 film, the Godzilla film, and his name is Tako, Tako, which means
It's octopus.
in Japanese. And Jason, he was the amusing businessman in the film.
Oh, yeah.
That was his name. So very, very funny. And the other thing about a guy in a rubber suit is when some of the fight scenes, if you watch it, actually have a martial aspect to it, because the actor who was in the Godzilla suit is a judoka. And
really,
yes, and he got to choreograph the fight scene with him and Kong. And one of the scenes is he does like a Ippon Seonage, just a shoulder throw. And Jason and I are like, holy shit, he just did a shoulder throw. Yeah, it was so good. So some of those
Godzilla's Japanese, so of course he's gonna know something like that, right?
Of course.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's why when it came out, it was panned by critics in the United States. They hated the film. The United States audiences absolutely hated it because King Kong, their beloved King Kong, represented the United States. And when they saw it, they're like, well, Godzilla's winning. And if Japan is winning over the United States, it turned into that type of thing. So that's why they initially hated it. It is now a cult classic, of course. So
yeah, but that one, to be fair, that one, it was more of a draw, that Kong was winning at some of the points in the fight too. It wasn't just Godzilla mopping up King Kong. So, but that, typical of, anyway.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, well,
go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think like that was kind of the whole point of the film, was it was a way for not that Godzilla didn't exist on its own in America or in the Western countries, which it certainly was, but it was a lot more of a culty thing. It wasn't as mainstream, and I think it was an attempt to really try and bridge that, right, to bring that monster movie ultimate matchup, again, a topic that probably a lot of people who are into the monster movies talked about, right? Because that's kind of also what Godzilla really sort of broke the mold with, was that monster versus monster, like these big scary monsters just fighting each other. And they're, Godzilla is a bit of an anti-hero, right? He ends up wrecking the city half the time, or depending on the film, he is the one they're trying to stop. Right. And I think over the years they've changed it, and they've had him be a little bit more of a force of nature, and always sort of keeping man in check if man is getting too technologically advanced or polluting the world or whatever, right? So it's really interesting, because I think that culturally, Godzilla represents something a lot deeper than King Kong does, right? Like King Kong was a pretty simplistic idea of a giant monkey running through going from an island, being taken back, being put on show, a big American circus type thing, and then breaking loose and running amok in the city, right? It doesn't quite play on the same level as Godzilla, just conceptually.
Yeah.
Which has always been my struggle with it. Like, I'm a huge Team Godzilla fan.
So how would you
probably get into that in a later segment? But
But how would you describe, you're saying, first he was like a force of nature, and then maybe he's the anti. What is he now? How would you describe, is he an anti-hero? Is he a superhero? What is Godzilla now?
He is an apex creature. So in a way, he's a really powerful natural force, but he's also still a biological creature. And in the same way that a lot of other very powerful creatures on this planet sort of understand that they have a balance that they need to keep in their ecosystem, just for an example, sharks, they don't just murder everything all the time because it's fun. They only feed when they need to feed, and they have the other fish swim around them, and they're not just destructive monsters because they can be. They're destructive monsters for a purpose. And I think with Godzilla is they try and transcend that, and they say his purpose is to keep a natural check for the planet Earth. he's a bit of a warrior for the environment, I think is what he's kind of morphed into a little bit here, and against the corruption of man exploiting the natural world. He's a bit of a force to keep people in check.
Yeah. And Jay, would you agree with that? Do you think that's what it is still to this day?
Yeah, he's kind of like an elemental incarnation. He's sort of like this god creature that's above other, you know, it's sort of like King of the Jungle taken to the next level, where he's kind of like the protector of Earth in its own kind of way. But it's become more international too, right? Like he had sort of his Japan thing, but now it's like of the whole Earth now that he's been kind of embraced. And well, I think, Alex, if you haven't seen it yet, the Godzilla King of Monsters was that 2019. I think you'd really like that. That fits into this, that sort of view of things, pretty well.
Well, like, so, I mean, you guys might be able to correct me, but I'm pretty sure sort of the main Western one was 1998, when it was just the film Godzilla.
Horrible.
That was the first American one.
So bad,
right?
Like
that was
right.
Roderick, it was so bad, bro. Oh.
That's where I stopped watching Godzilla things. Like that was like, before that I loved it, and then that was what I was saying. Things it just was like the super cheesy ones. I'm like, yeah. Then it was that was like, oh my god. And then
that's also like the first one that wasn't like switched over from a Japanese thing to an American, or like dubbed in English and like sort of modeled a bit. Like the other ones were like Japanese made and like driven.
Right.
This was the first time that the Americans took a stab at it, right? They took a concept which they didn't understand and they don't have in the same way, and they tried to like, well, we can do it too, right? And it wasn't the same thing
as Americans do. It's like the Americans do this again and again. They'll take like Iron Chef and try to do Iron Chef American. It loses something because it's not the Japanese. That they do it with British shows too. But anyway, it's that kind of thing that you gotta have some of that Japanesey thing to it, the cheesy Japanese thing where they're just weird. That's got to have that kind of element. If it gets too serious, it doesn't quite work for me.
It doesn't hold up the same way, yeah.
No, but then again, I started out with those ones, so
yeah. And the reason is
models.
I think the reason they screwed up the 1998 version, Alex, and I think you pointed it out, was it's because Hollywood took control of a Japanese icon, tried to do their own Hollywood spin on it. The creature itself didn't look like Godzilla, it looked like a giant lizard. They didn't give him a breath weapon, although they have the kind of a slight thing in there where he breathes and it catches fire to something, but it's not a breath weapon. It's all ridiculous. And I actually remember watching this film. It is the only film I ever walked out of. It was Godzilla.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I have since then watched it all. It is horrible, but I remember watching it, like I walked out of the film because it was so bad, because my beloved Godzilla was destroyed.
Yeah.
So bad. Hated it. And here's the funny thing about Godzilla 2, which I don't know if many of our viewers know. Godzilla has actually changed in size over the 6 films they've had. He's been like 50 meters tall to being like 300 meters tall. Like there he is. He's gone through the gamut there.
Yeah. Same thing with Kong too.
And also
there's a webpage shows a comparison of how much they've changed. Yeah.
Another thing with Godzilla that I like is sort of his bulk, his level of spikes. Like to me, the God's big pack of spikes up on the top, right? Almost more like a bit of a peak of a mountain up on his spikes, but throughout the various reiterations that he shifts and he changes a little bit, and like overall looks kind of like a T-Rex with slightly longer arms, right? And then, but what I like is my big jacked up Godzilla, the big thick fat tail and big bulky shoulders. And I love when they add all the effects and whatnot with his breath weapon, or when he, like, a lot of the times any sort of energy that he's hit with will regenerate him and recharge him, which is also like one of the coolest powers he's got. Like when he was fighting Mecha Godzilla and then all that lightning comes down and hits him and it just like recharges him. It was like, oh, this is so cool. such a good
But that's interesting
monster.
about the lightning, because they changed that, like in some of the movies, like in this 62 one, lightning was hurting him more. They put up the high tension wires, Blue Oyster guys, and they put up the electric wires to keep Godzilla out, and then Kong went and wrecked it so that he could get in. But the electricity they were using against him, where Kong was the one that was getting charged by electricity in
Right.
this one, because there was the storm clouds that would come in, and he Hulk Hogan that thing when he was beat down and came back with the lightning.
Yeah, it's interesting that they gave him the lightning thing. I mean, because obviously radiation is Godzilla, and I guess lightning and electricity is Kong. That makes sense, doesn't it, Alex? Being the electrician here, right? So,
Well, and that's honestly what they started to kind of explain a little bit about these. Without getting too into the new movie, they touch on them as the Titans, as they're called. These monsters, or this group of monsters like Mothra. They come up with some sort of scientific, using huge air quotes here, scientific explanation for these this species of god monster, if you will, and I guess what it is that for Kong, they really needed to up his power, right? Because again, he was the American icon of that monster movie, but the original just doesn't hold a candle to the original Godzilla with his original powers and just destructive force that he was, right? So they've all gone through power shifts, and they've all changed a little bit. But still, if we want to have that debate of Godzilla versus Kong, it still kind of frustrates me that they even try and power up Kong to get to a Godzilla level. Like, when you end up I've got some of my magic cards from all the collections of the alternate art for the various monsters of that he fights, like when he fights like Godira, the three-headed dragon, right? Like, like what a cool monster for him to fight, right? And then you see a monster like Mothra. I remember the first time I saw Mothra, and I was like, why is that? Like, what the heck? It's a giant bug. Like, what is that going to do to him, right? But then he's got all these crazy powers, and it's really cool how it just keeps you guessing because you're never sure. And then they take something that was a setup, established icon like King Kong, and he's like, big gorilla, pounds on his chest, kind of bulletproof, smashes stuff, and then they sort of apply the weirder, more obscure Japanese powers to him.
right.
Overall, I get it. I get they had to do that to put him as a contender, but it's not really true Kong for me.
Yeah, it obviously has changed, and the funny thing about the original film, when Kong and Godzilla appeared, that was the first time that either one of them appeared in color, because they were all black and white up until then. And there was actually a couple of Godzilla films that were color prior to this, but they were colorized in post-production. They weren't actually filmed in color. So that's why if you look at the older 1950, 1960 Godzilla films, they look a little weird with the colors because they were colorized. So this is the first time that it was actually filmed in color. So,
but I think the King Kong and Godzilla things are really cool because there's one for every generation, because they've been around for that long, decades and decades, like literally generations. You can have a grandchild level. You can have 3 generations that each one gets to have their own version of King Kong, of Godzilla, and it grows with them. Same thing, James Bond, same kind of thing, where there's always one, and it's different, but there's still some kind of continuity there. So that's kind of cool. Like, how many franchises go on that long and still manage to speak to somebody?
I think it's the longest running franchise in film. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Because early films are going to have anything, right?
Well, like 1954 is when it started, and it's still going. If you look at TV, you've got 1963 with Doctor Who, which is the longest running science fiction show. But I think that's the actual longest running thing. I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure it is. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at Godzilla today, as opposed to back then, obviously the commentary on we shouldn't be messing around with the planet, we shouldn't be exploding atom bombs, how Godzilla came, you know. Jason and I made the observation, Alex, that why is it that all these titans are always trapped in either an iceberg or a mountain, and all of a sudden they like come to, you know, it's like they're constantly breaking out of these structures and then destroying cities. And I was telling Jay, I'm like, haven't the people learned, like, you know, they know it's like it's always rehashing the same shit, but we watch it anyway. It's like, oh, there's the iceberg, oh, it's glowing blue, I wonder what's in the middle of it, oh, it's Godzilla. You know, so
well, and you know what, I think that's because there always has to be, for these massive creatures to have any sort of you know, ability to inspire fear or to grip your attention, there has to be some kind of like potential explanation or belief behind them, right? And in that, like, you don't know what's inside of a giant mountain at any given moment. Like, you think like, oh no, we're just going to scan that mountain, make sure it doesn't have any monsters in it. Like, they don't do that. So I mean, I know that it's not possible, but in theory it is possible. You don't know what's in a mass, you don't know what's inside the Rocky Mountains, right? Like, we don't know. Or like in the depths of the ocean, right? A lot of monsters coming out from the depths of the ocean, or like another one that really spun off of Godzilla, like the Pacific Rim series, right? Where there was that alien rift in the bottom of the ocean that opened up and then the monsters were pouring out of there, right? So I think it just comes to, again, that humans have been passing on for eons, is the fear of the unknown, creatures in mountains and icebergs and things like that. Is where could we possibly hide these monsters on the planet?
right.
You know, it's not like, oh no, he's in the forest over there. Like, no, he's
yeah, you're not
huge.
hiding Sasquatch.
Right?
It's much bigger. Plus, you also get like the dinosaur thing, right? You find the bones in the ground. You get the mammoths. You get like the tar pit kind of thing. You get that buried deep, and it's from the past coming back up.
Yeah.
The monsters that they talk about, this is the genre, the kaiju, right? So Pacific Rim and Godzilla, that's part of the genre, which is massive. Japan, and my buddy Jeremy, who lives in Japan, I'm sure he's going to have a couple things to say about Godzilla. But they absolutely love it, and the word Godzilla, this is an interesting one. So the Japanese word is what, Jay? It's not Godzilla.
Godzilla. Gojira.
Yeah, so it's Gojira, I think is what they call it in Japan, but we anglicized it and called it Godzilla, which I think it means kind of like large ape-like creature. It's I got to look that up again, but it's a bastardized version of two Japanese words that they kind of put together, and and yeah, so Gojira or Godzilla, that's the name it is now, and it's got to be $1 billion industry, I would think. The amount of toys and stuff sold.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I was just saying. And crossovers too. Like it shows up. Like, I can just think off the top of my head, like it was in the Simpsons. It pops up in the movie The Hangover. It's constantly referenced as this massive Japanese icon. Anytime there's any Japanese character in a movie, it seems like somehow Godzilla gets brought up, or a giant monster gets brought up like that, right? Destroying the cities. It was a way for, I think it's probably one of the largest cultural exports of Japan, besides like sushi, you know, like, it's something that's so associated with that culture. It's crazy how that idea just caught on all around the world.
So here's a question for both of you guys. What color is Godzilla's breath weapon?
Blue.
Yeah, I say blue as well. I mean, I think it looks the best blue. It's been a bunch of different colors.
And when he gets his spikes that light up, oh,
Yes,
that's very cool. So,
but I mean, they've had it be like red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. I believe are the colors.
so the first color that it was when they colorized it, it was white. But in 1962, when they had the Kong versus Godzilla one, that was the first time that they used blue. And so the trivia on this one that says the first film where Godzilla used the standard blue atomic breath, it was the coloration of the Cherenkov radiation generated by nuclear reactors, which is a blue color. So it replaced the incandescent light from previous films, which was white radioactive vapor. So that's where they kind of crossed over. And I love when his spikes, that's amazing. There's something very cool about that.
it's like do 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 boom.
It shows like the charge, like the force building behind that attack or that release of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm also looking here at a little trivia piece. It says there. So do you remember when they were filling up the pit with gasoline in that film, Jay?
Oh yeah, they had the tanker trucks with pouring the stuff down. Yeah.
And so the tanker trucks, it's funny, it's a Japanese film, but on the side of the tanker trucks, it said Caltex. It didn't actually have Japanese writing, it had English writing. And I was like, that's kind of weird. So the trivia for that one is that it is not an error. Caltex is a division of Chevron, but division that they use in Asia. So that's why.
So it was product placement.
Early product placement, man. Yeah, pretty crazy. So I don't know. Godzilla is one of those things which every time I see it, I kind of have to hunker down and just watch how absurd it is and how awesome it is. And if you look at the monsters, they have changed. The rubber suit have changed over the years. Obviously, as Alex pointed out, now they're CGI and that type of thing. But if you look at the monsters themselves, the face changes, the teeth change, the spikes, everything about it. They often would sometimes reuse a suit, sometimes they would make new ones. And a lot of the Godzillas, I don't know if you guys remember, is eyes are on the side of the head, and then they moved them to the front of his head, so it made him look more like a predator, because predators have their eyes in the front of their head as opposed to the sides of the head. So it changes the look of Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's sometimes more comical too when his eyes in the front of his head, because it's just these two large unblinking white eyes. So
I think one of my favorite things was like the baby Godzilla. I don't know if you can like pull up a photo of that and just show everybody, but like baby Godzilla just looks so funny. It's hilarious, right? And the son of Godzilla, the one they did there, so good.
Have you ever seen that one, Jay? Do you remember that the son of Godzilla when he's trying to use his breath weapon? It's these little O-rings.
I haven't not late. Like I said, I had that after the '98 one. I kind of haven't seen things in a long time. So it's been a long time since I've seen some of this stuff. But
I'm pulling up a picture now. I'm going to put it in front. So that is baby Godzilla, and his name is Manila or Minya. That was his name.
Yeah. That's the little one I got there.
Yeah, there you go.
Pretty cute.
Oh, is that not a magic?
But there's
it's from his Godzilla deck.
Oh, right.
You haven't lost to that yet?
Yeah, probably.
And then there's Mecha Godzilla, just super cool. Another one of my like favorites. I actually never saw the movie with this one. Did you guys see like the Space Godzilla?
Yep.
I never saw that one. Was that one good? Was that all about aliens and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you look at like Mechagodzilla is a prime example, that's about aliens too. Aliens actually made Mechagodzilla, and
Well, that one they theorized that he was an alien weapon of destruction. Yeah.
but they actually have aliens in that in the 1974 is Mechagodzilla versus Godzilla, and they're aliens that, but they have a space Godzilla, and there's some really cool monsters. You know, like
You guys recognize?
What's that one?
That's the Japanese card. That's the little oh man, I'm blanking on his name. The little it's like the wasp that shoots like lasers out of his eyes.
Alex, one of the funny things that always happens in all of these films that no one really talks about is they're in the middle of the ocean and Godzilla is standing and he's destroying aircraft carriers and submarines, and he's about waist high. What is he?
Yeah.
He's good at treading water.
Like
He's
seriously,
really good at treading water with his little dino legs. They just go
2 miles deep, and he's standing and he's like emerging out of the water like this, and he's just wrecking. Like it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Jason pointed out we were watching the Kong version, and Kong falls off the raft that they pull him in on, and then he's standing there doing his thing. I'm like, wow, how's he doing that? So I think in the new one they address it where Kong is standing on an aircraft carrier. So I think that allows him to not. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we definitely have to watch the new one to see. Yeah.
What in the not the King Kong version, in the Godzilla universe, what would you say is the most iconic thing of Godzilla next to his breath weapon?
His sound, the sound, of course, his cry, his that classic.
That's good point.
Gotta be it.
And they've changed the pitch of Godzilla's roar over the years too.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's gotten a lot lower than I think originally.
Mm-hmm.
It was very high pitched, I think. And then over the years they've played around with making him more on the dinosaur side of things, right? And making it more of that like Tyrannosaurus mixed with a Godzilla roar kind of hybrid.
But they shouldn't. They should, it's best when it's the high pitched, ridiculous scream.
Then it's the Godzilla roar. It's
exactly. Yeah. So
but again, I think it's just like people criticizing it and saying like, well, like that's not what a giant lizard sounds like, and it's like, well, dude, it's
well, giant lizards don't breathe and have atomic breath either. So
yeah, exactly, right. And it's so iconic, like you could hear that. And I remember I had a couple of little Godzilla toys, and every time I even if I just close my eyes and hear that, I hear the little toy that I had making like this really stupid, shitty, like quality sound shriek. But that to me is what Godzilla sounds like, is like some little 90s Hasbro toy Godzilla.
Yeah. The sound is funny. So when I watched the Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, which is in 1974, the beginning of the film, they have Godzilla destroying a city, and they're like, why is Godzilla destroying a city? I don't understand. And every time Godzilla would roar, it wasn't his roar. It was this weird roar. And I'm like, that's not the Godzilla sound. And I didn't really remember the film because it had been like 35 years since I last watched it. And what it was actually Mechagodzilla destroying the city, but he had like a Godzilla suit over the right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, that's why it's not the real Godzilla. It's not the right sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Godzilla's a deep monster. There's layers to the man, layers.
There's a great scene. See if I can find it here. There's a great scene. Hold on. Oh, here it is. There's a great scene in the original where King Kong takes a tree and shoves it into Godzilla's mouth. Remember that, Jay?
Yeah.
And so that is actually a throwback to the King Kong movie, where King Kong takes a tree and shoves it down the throat of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And so they kind of, that was just a throwback to the original film. So I thought it was hilarious.
Who would you guys say is your most iconic non-Godzilla monster from the Godzilla franchise?
Mothra.
Like, what's your favorite?
Mothra's
Jason's.
I think Jason likes Mothra because it's always you always had the females who would sing and they'd be like, "La," and then Mothra would come, right?
Yeah. I've got my own Mothra remix sometime. I'll get together a heavy metal band and do my own retake, and it'll move over Anvil. I've got a better version that's coming out.
I think this is on a side note. Jay, if someone tuned into the podcast right now and saw you sitting there with your white gloves, they'd be like, "What is going on?"
Oh, they wouldn't know. Yeah.
Like, why is he wearing white gloves?
So, yeah.
Or when he handles his collection.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah. I would say, Alex, my favorite is, and I can't remember. Can you maybe look this one up? In one of the Godzilla films, there was a giant robot that he fought, and the reason that I liked it so much is because it was almost like a Shogun warrior.
Shogun warriors were great toy of the 70s or 80s or
wait, did it have like the big claws, and it was a robot? Or
I'm trying to see,
because there's Gigan, he was like a sort of a robotic, he's kind of more,
nope,
I don't know, monstrous.
No, he's a monster, but I'm trying to find it now. Jay, do you know what we're referring to? Does that kind of ring a bell?
Vaguely rings a bell, but like I say, it's been so long, I haven't seen things in a while. I've only seen a handful of them in the last.
Oh, here it is. Found it.
Oh, Jet Jaguar. Yeah,
Jet Jaguar.
Yes.
So Jet Jaguar was a human-sized robot created by the inventor Goro Ubuki for unknown reasons. So here's a picture of him. That's what he looked like. I don't know. I always loved it.
Yeah,
it looks very familiar. Yeah,
looks like the Tin Man from the Wizard on Oz, the Wizard of Oz, like as a Power Ranger.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that's a ripoff, because there's a Japanese thing, Ultraman, as well, and I don't know which one ripped off who from that, but it was kind of very similar. But the reason I liked it is because I grew up with Shogun Warriors. And Jay, do you remember the toy, the Shogun Warriors?
Yeah, when it would shoot out yeah.
And so there was a few, there was a few Shogun Warriors. And actually, we did a toy episode with Shogun Warriors.
Yeah, and Shogun Warriors were great. They were big ass fucking toys. They weren't little action figures. They were fucking giant ass robots. Yeah. So giant monsters, giant robots, like.
They were a foot tall, and they were plastic, and they would shoot like plastic throwing stars or whatever like that. This is when toys could actually shoot things, and the world wouldn't lose their shit.
Wouldn't go, oh my god, my child lost an eye, I'm suing you. It's like you could have things that were completely destructive.
Yeah.
So it had to be before Boba Fett then, right, with the rocket launcher.
Yeah, and remember we talked about that on a previous episode. So for those people who haven't seen it, Boba Fett, the original toy, had a jetpack and he had a rocket that it would launch, and that was the original toy. But I believe that Kenner pulled that from the shelves because some kid lost an eye, and so
which is one of the reasons that Boba Fett became such a popular character, because everyone has had this built-up desire to have him, and then they didn't get him, so it's a withholding of the desire, and then. There wouldn't be Mandalorian today if it wasn't for that toy mishap, I think.
Well, there you go. So I think they should bring back toys that shoot things.
Yeah. Ever since they invented Nerf, like, come on, what are you guys doing? There's no more excuses for this stuff.
I know. It's just, we're getting soft, Jay. That's the problem.
I know, we're getting soft.
What do you think? I mean, Alex, you're a brand new dad. You have a new son who's sleeping behind you, which we're very excited about. And You have the ability to shape this child. Okay. So tell me, what is your plan? I mean, how many days old is he now? Do we lose him?
He is no.
There we go.
And no, he's 6 days old. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
6 days old. Okay, so for the next 18 years, what are you going to do to shape this kid's life to turn into a wickedly cool, awesome, geeky kid? What are you going to do?
Well, he's just gonna have to tune into the Torvus podcast and just soak it all up. You know, I think he's got a lot of material to cover. But yeah, no, I mean, like child's toys, like I get it. I get you don't want your kids to choke on them, especially like if you're talking about infants and toddlers. Yeah, they grab stuff, they put it in their mouth, but like, you know, you gotta be a good parent too. Like, don't, if your kid's the kind of kid that puts shit in his mouth and eats it, don't give him those kind of toys, right? But don't restrict it for the kids that can understand not to eat toys and stuff. Like I grew up with Lego. Hope my kid grows up with Lego and he doesn't like eat Lego blocks. Like I'll explain, don't eat the Lego blocks before you give him the Lego blocks. And as long as that concept's good, I don't see the flipping problem, you know, like you can't baby proof and baby wrap every single thing. You got to learn how to fall down. You got to learn like to be careful and not fall down as well. I think there's a bit of a balance. Like, you know, you got to find the playgrounds where it's not all like, there's the ability to fall, right? You gotta be able to fall and get back up and toughen yourself up a little bit, right? So I don't know. That's my standpoint. I'm sure it'll change the first time he takes a bad spill, then I'll bubble wrap him up. Hope I'm everybody that has anything unsafe, but right now I still have that standpoint.
Well, let me tell you, this is the wonderful thing about being a parent. You get to be a kid again. You get to go to the toy store and order stuff online. It's like, you know what? This is
socially acceptable.
It's not for me, honey. It's for the kid. And you get to go toy shopping, like for real. And then, you know, Caitlin's gonna be like, why do we have more Star Wars action figures? What's going on?
So many lightsabers. Yeah.
Okay, this is totally off topic, but I'm going to ask it. If Jax has a lightsaber, what color is his kyber crystal? What color is his lightsaber?
Ooh. That's pretty tough. I think right now, I've always wanted to see like a dark blue lightsaber instead of like the sky blue, just because he's got really dark blue eyes right now. I mean, most babies' eye color change, but you know, just based off that right now, I think like a navy dark blue lightsaber. I think that would be a cool color for him.
I think you would want him to have a navy blue dark saber.
Dark saber, yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's what I think you would want.
I don't know if I guess I didn't tell you guys this, but I mean, I kind of found out it's like another month before it gets here, but I've ordered a smart lightsaber, what Caitlin has for my birthday. It's like they do these new like smart lightsabers, so you can change all the colors, you can get custom sound fonts, you can do all kinds of different stuff. It's gonna be, I guess, a bit of a product plug here, but it's called the Ebon Razor from Electrum Sabers. Looks amazing. I'm really excited, and it's full dual capabilities. It's got like a separate blade you attach on it so that you can smash it on stuff, and then I've got the
Excellent.
one, the like movie quality for the saber with a katana style blade.
Wow.
Yeah, you're gonna have to
Super
do like a
excited
mini review when you get it.
I will. Yeah, I think we'll have to do a lightsaber episode or something.
You know what we
Like
should
that.
do? Part of the Torvus podcast at the end, we should do a product review of like a game, a book, a toy, anything that's geek related. It's like, here's our 5-minute review of the so-and-so lightsaber or whatever. I think that'd be super fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be good. Tie it into the theme, like Godzilla review or something like that, like Godzilla toy or whatever. Yeah, that'd be good.
So you have a new child. Which is the first Godzilla and or King Kong movie? At what order do you have your child watch these things in? How do you expose people and get them to be properly cultured and educated into these finer classics?
Let me jump in before Alex.
Well, I think.
Hold on, wait, time. I want to point something out. So this is a big debate, I think, because if Alex says, hey, he's going to watch the 2021 version, then he's got to go backwards. Do you think that's going to be harder for him to be like, oh, what's the shitty stuff? So what do you think, Alex?
So here, I got a couple different points on that. I think you're absolutely right. It's the same debate for Star Wars or Indiana Jones or anything that's been sort of remade in a newer one with newer CGI or technology or whatever it is. I think what's important is, as it was shown to the public, you have to take into account people's ability to reference like seeing the first lightsaber, the way it was in the original films come out versus compared to now. Like, yeah, not a doubt in my mind that the new lightsabers are way cooler, way better. They sound crisper. Like, so I think that with Godzilla, you got to start at the beginning for that CGI special effect level. You got to see the guys in the monkey suits and appreciate it with that tongue-in-cheek before you see the mega monsters on the big screen in like flawless CGI ripping each other to pieces. And not only that, but because I think that if you start younger and you watch the earlier Godzillas, there is more of that tongue-in-cheek aspect. And like you said, they tried to appeal it to a younger generation to begin with by making Kong look a little sillier, and Godzilla, it wasn't as serious and the themes weren't so intense. And I think that will be an important factor in it too, right? Is we're not going to dive right in and, we're going to show my 2-year-old kid who's just starting to understand things, these massive monsters just destroying cities, right? Like, it's already, you don't even know what reality is. I'm not going to try and throw this like concept that a monster is just going to come and squish you while you sleep, right? Like, you don't want to scare the hell out of your kids.
I was probably 7 when I saw my first Godzilla film. And I think the reason that you have to start at the beginning, Alex, rather than start at the end, is you get so much more out of the films later on because they make these subtle references to the past films. And this goes for everything. Like, for example, I'm watching The Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier right now. And you can watch that as a standalone, of course. And I was watching it with Linz. And they make references. It's like, well, who is this character? And oh, why does he have a mask? Why does Baron Zemo have the mask? Where's that from? And stuff like these are all things that you have to, if you know the comic or the past MCU stuff, it's going to help you, and that just helps the experience, in my opinion, rather than having these standalone films. The casual viewer versus the geek viewer, I guess.
You're absolutely right. You're not going to get the references that these new movies make. And a lot of the times, depending on the movie too, right? Like, to me, that's what does make a good movie, is when you can tie it to the rest of it. And, you're selling a product, you're marketing an idea. And when you can give something back to the viewer for, taking the time and, being passionate about the subject matter. And again, we're going to reference it again, but The Mandalorian, I think that's what they do so fantastically, is a lot of detail in the background, a lot of little things that only the true people, the hardcore fans would be able to recognize, and you're not making it overt or super obvious, but for the people who do care, it's there for you. And I think that's what makes a really great film or series or genre, whatever it is. It's art, and I think it's important to give something to the viewer too.
And in the world we live in right now, which is all kind of turned upside down because of what's going on, I think it's important to have some fun. And that's how, from a mental health perspective, if you have a healthy imagination, it can get you through almost anything. Tough times, difficult times, that type of thing. And so I really credit knowing geek culture that's got me through a lot of stuff. And obviously in the last year plus, it's been tough, but just watching the stuff, talking to you guys, laughing about it, it certainly helps. So I think more people should do it. And if you're interested in geek culture, obviously you can find us online, which is torvuspodcast.com. And we talk about movies, geek cultures, monsters, mayhem, martial arts, motivation, you name it, we will cover it. So gentlemen, I really appreciate you joining me today for doing the Godzilla episode. We will tackle the new one soon. But until then, keep on geeking on.